Welcome to a true spiritual adventure story like the world has never known. Volume 2, Rise of the First World Teacher, with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon. I'm Dr. James Weldon, Yogadhi, speaking to you from my home on Heavenly Mountain in Boone, North Carolina. In this location, in this community here, I believe someday will be one of the great spiritual centers in the world, like there are many in Asia. So we're continuing in my autobiography, the second book, entitled The Rise of the First World Teacher. And in the last chapter, I had the opportunity to first meet Sri Ravi Shankar. He came to my hometown in Boulder, Colorado. And I had the benefit of learning his class, the Healing Breath class at that time it was called. Now it's called the Happiness Course, by the way, available virtually anywhere in the world now. And I arrived at actually my first advanced course just a few weeks afterwards. This advanced course was being held in Pittsburgh, just ahead of a major winter storm. I just completed printing out the first draft copy of this book, which at that time was called The Revelations of Ho. Revelations of Amazement. It's about the secret journey to the enlightened consciousness. So we arrive in Pittsburgh for our advanced program just as the entire country is about to be buried in ice and snow. And Sri Ravi Shankar has just arrived from Switzerland. Actually, he was called Panditji at that time. And because of the long trip, we're told to go to bed and rest from the night. And the next morning, the course begins, and about 150 people are assembled with all our blankets and pillows from all over the country, from the US mostly, in a very small lecture hall. And by the weekend, about another 100 will arrive. And at the first meeting that evening, Sri enters the hall, and he's dancing and singing a song. And the effect is absolutely electric. No sooner does he step into the room, wave after wave of bliss sweeps through my body, and tears of joy rush to my eyes. And as Sri reaches the stage, he turns to face the group. And he stands there and sways to the melody as joy and delight cross his face. And then he raises his hand above his head and starts to clap the rhythm. And something deep, very deep within me, stirs within me when I see him stand and do that. And I say, oh my God, I've seen this before. I've been here before. And my mind absolutely reels with the implication. This is the scene from the earliest vision I can remember having of a child of 5 years old. I saw this very moment long ago when I was 5 years old. And I'm absolutely shocked. Disbelief, wonder, joy, all swirls together in my mind. And as Sri speaks, my attention returns to the room. 15 feet away from him, in my hands, I'm holding my little draft of the Revelations of Ho at that time, just because I couldn't find a word to describe Revelations of Amazement. And the scene shakes me to the core of my being. And he sits down and begins to speak immediately. And what does he talk about? Guys, wow. This is what he said. I'm holding this right here. He says, when is a novel interesting? When do we call it a novel? When it's full of thrills and climaxes, isn't it so? It's interesting when there's a big drama, right? Then we find it more interesting. Suppose there were no events at all in the story. Suppose in the story someone just came and they ate and they slept and they kept doing this over and over again for the whole story. What would the novel be? Where would the story be? It would be really boring. A novel is more interesting when it's more like a soap opera. You enjoy that, don't you? You look at it all and it's great. This is again him talking. In the same way in creation, each of us is a novel. It's just like walking into a library and looking at a shelf of books. See how many there are? There are thousands of such novels. In each, there's a character. In each, there's a story woven around that character. It goes on and on. In the same way, in the universe, it is all living knowledge. Millions have come, millions have gone unnoticed. And amongst all those stories, some 2 or 3 novels which are prominent stand out for thousands of years. Don't you see it that way? Look at your own life as a novel without hiding anything. Look at all the ups and the downs, the climaxes, the anticlimaxes. Look at everything in it. It's so interesting, isn't it? Something new happens. And that's the story of life. Wow. You know, I've been amazed so many times in my life. But this moment in some ways shatters them all. At that moment, all my longing for God comes together in one crushing blow upon my mind. My mind can't fathom what is happening. You see, I'm sitting in that audience, holding my story, my novel, in my hand, all 350 pages at this time, and he's talking about it. Is this possible? I give up trying to understand. And amazed, I slump over in meditation, absorbed in this deep inner feeling, reflecting on this mystery. And I disappear from the room completely. And the next thing I know, the meeting is over and I find myself actually back in my hotel room. You know, I've come to this program for answers to the meaning of the last month's visions, the things that had been happening recently, yet the mystery has only grown deeper. I can't wait to my next encounter with this amazing being. So let's begin chapter 2 of the second book, The Rise of the First World Teacher, from my autobiography. And the poem here is When All Questions End, Wonder Begins. And so the poem is, I belong to you, and you belong to me. I've come just for you, and you've come just for me. I'm here for your joy, and that joy is all that I need. So back in my hotel room in Pittsburgh, in the middle of this tremendous snowstorm, I'm sitting on my bed watching the blizzard outside of the motel room at this advanced course with Sri Sri Ravi Shankar in the early 1990s. And I review the last few hours, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. I definitely have a connection with this knowledge. And the effect on me is just too profound. I just can't understand it. I'm wondering, you know, do I have a past relationship with Sri Sri? Do I want or need such a relationship? I don't know. I decided I'm going to see what I can do to actually meet with Sri Sri and look into his eyes and soul with whatever intuitive gift I've been given in the Mitchell Project, I'm wondering then perhaps I'll know if this is for me. And the very next day, a chance comes to meet with Sri Sri. I'm surprised at how easy it is, almost too easy. I've seen such teachers, gurus, and other famous people surrounded by a huge phalanx of guards and secretaries. And I find all of that is so impersonal. This is how it was with Maharishi, when the number of people coming are so large. And I understand how this must be, but it doesn't prevent me from wishing things were different. After that evening meeting, I follow a small group of people back to Sri Sri's room. And apparently it's easy to see him. No coaching or approval is required. I actually didn't have this in the book. I want to share this with you. I am so amazed by that first evening with Sri Sri, where he is talking about my life as a novel, and I'm holding my novel in my hand at that time. I can't sleep that night. I'm just, the energy is just too powerful. Actually, I haven't told anybody, and I can't sleep at all. Actually get up out of my bed after everybody's gone to bed, and I go down the hall, and I know where his room is. And I sit there with my 350 pages of the revelations of the story that I'm sharing with you, not this part, but the earlier version. Actually, I spend the entire night there. You know, for me, just to be there, just to be at that door, it is good enough. And there is actually a work that he does later called Bang on the Door. That entire night, I haven't slept. I spent the whole night just sitting there. So anyway, we're back. So after the meeting, a small group of people follow Sri Sri back to his room, and apparently it's really easy to see him. No coaching or approval is required. And we'll wait outside the door for the opportunity to speak him. If it happens, it happens. And one woman comes out and says, we're supposed to go to bed. And immediately another one comes out and says, no, we can wait. And I don't know what to do. You know, most of the people leave. And only 3 of us stay behind. And a few minutes later, Sri Sri opens the door and invites us in with a twinkle in his eye. He knows that we're there. He says, okay, come on. And we enter this very plain motel room with a couch and a TV and sit on the carpet in front of him. And I'm not feeling any hurry. So I allow the others to speak first. You know, I'm shy. And I watch as he greets each person. And it's all small chit chat. And he says, oh, how are you doing? Are you enjoying the course? Are you okay? Is your room comfortable? But there's something more, something special here. He has a special penetrating awareness that seems to touch everybody. Apparently, he feels the depths of people's awareness and knows how to reach them. And I'm holding the working draft in my hand. I was really shaken after the first experience. I don't understand how Sri Sri could just touch me so deeply with so few words. And I have to admit that even with the changes I've been through, I'd really spent very little time in close to spiritual masters. And so this is something new for me. The others here in the room know him well, and I don't know what to expect. And Sri Sri turns after talking to the other people, and he looks into my eyes and he smiles. And although he has spoken to others in the room, I know that he's felt me all the time. It's as if he's watching me every moment, the same way that I'm watching him. You know, that consciousness. I'm telling you, it can see in a lot of places. No eyes required. Those of you that know about the intuitive program, you know that. So I'm watching him. And almost in a whisper I speak, Sri Sri, this book about my experiences. It's called The Revelations of Ho, And I hand him the manuscript. And he holds the work in his hands and he flips a few pages, but he doesn't read it like the same way. And I can't explain it, but as he touches it, I feel the reading is going on. I feel that no reading is required him to understand fully. I give him the book, but deep inside burns a question so hidden. It couldn't enter my mind because I couldn't believe it was even possible. And this is the question. Could it be? Might it be the one that I felt so long ago? 1976. This was what was hidden. And he closes his eyes and he passes within and smiles radiantly. And I close my eyes as well. And suddenly my spiritual faculties are fully awake. And I follow Sri Sri's awareness down within. Down we go together through layer after layer after creation, deeper and deeper and deeper in bliss. And I pass the finest level of my experience, and he's there with me, by my side. His awareness continues moving somewhere I cannot easily follow. And I'm left alone, and I wonder, okay, I understand there are still things for me to achieve. Then suddenly I go much deeper and disappear. Timeless moments tick away. In perfection, there we are, we're sitting together on this finest level of creation as little bubbles of infinite life. Wow. 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 I'm so amazed but unmoved even in that space. And then Sri Sri opens his eyes instantly, and so do I. And the room comes back into view. And my consciousness had disappeared into that level of the finest level of creation. A new state of consciousness apparently opened by his mere intention. And gently he turns the pages of the book, not reading as if he's absorbing the context. And then he returns to the beginning, he scans the contents of the chapters. And after a few moments, I feel his awareness dropping into an intuitive state, and I follow him into a similar state, and the oneness. We become united. Somehow our eyes merge in an instant. My entire life with him. It's just in images of my childhood, youth, adult years flash by. And in the same way the story of my love of God passes to him. Like a movie playing at super high speed, my entire life rolls by. I realize I've never communicated so completely with anyone before. There have been moments of intuition, telepathy, and oneness with others that really have been astounding, but this is deeper than I ever imagined possible. In tears of gladness and amazement well up in my eyes, and I realize this is the real unity with another that so many spiritual beings have spoken. And I realize that this is how it can be, not just with this great spiritual master, but with everyone. And then a look of surprise actually crosses his face. He's surprised. And I wonder, what is it? Does he see something in my future, my past? An adventure company? I'm curious, what can it be? And the mood passes, and Shushi turns and he looks at me. He smiles with a sparkle in his eyes that holds a little tinge of mischief. And he looks very close and he says, So now is it becoming clear? A cry of joy leaps from my lips. These were the words I was waiting for. I shared my story of amazement, all the layers of love within us all, the limitless life, the promise of living really an eternal life, a real eternal life. At this doorway of the infinite, this place, this mysterious place. And I say, "Oh, Shri, it's so bright," I reply. And I'm speaking of the brilliance of God that in that supreme place that fills my awareness at this point. And I'm thinking, he knows. He really knows what I've been through. I realize in astonishment. And he actually hands the book back to me and nods for us to go ahead. He says, "Good, good, very good." And I feel blessed, even though some might not understand this work. I understand that. I wrote it just actually, in some sense, to get it out, just to be able to free myself because I was so perplexed by it. Some might think me crazy for writing. This writing will come in its time and bring some good to the world. And waves of gratitude flow through my mind. And then Shri turns to us as a group and he speaks a few more words of encouragement. Then he gets up to leave. It has been a really full day for me. A day to remember. And he opens the door and steps into his bedroom. And he turns and looks at me again. And watching, I'm absolutely transfixed. I see Shri, and then he reaches up to his heart and gives a little flick of his wrist. And I melt and cry out in ecstasy. At that moment, a visible spark, a shower of love, a bolt of light jumps from his heart to mine. I mean, literally. And again, my mind is shattered. Shattered. And as he closes the door, I see that he's left the room. But he wants me to know that he's come into this space. And that night after this meeting, I'm shaken by what I felt. Something has happened here that I do not understand. And as I lay in bed that night, and actually the rest of that night, the energy is racing through my body. And so after an hour, it's obvious that I'm not going to sleep. So I rise and pace about the room, wondering again and again about this meeting with Shri. Something here that I want to complete, to understand, but that clarity I wanted wouldn't come. And I light a little candle and I step from my dark room into the dimly lit hallway. And for the next 20 minutes, I roam around the halls of the Holiday Inn, hoping that maybe I would meet somebody that I could talk to. But I find nobody. Everyone is in deep sleep except me. How could I sleep after such an encounter? Again, in a few moments, this being has turned my life upside down. I thought I had finally gotten this all out of my system by writing this book. But here it was staring me in the face, stronger than ever. So making my rounds of the hotel at last, I come again to Shri. For many minutes, I stand in front of the door, feeling the presence of this great being within me also, as if doing this will provide some clarity of our relation. Finally, I sit down again on the floor outside his door and begin to pray. I had no questions. I had no answers to my questions, so I began to wonder. The prayers turned into tears, and those tears went on and on. My emotion was like a flood, a torrent for the oneness with God that would not stop. And that longing continued all through the night as I sat and waited. So somehow for me, just being at that door was enough. My dear friends, no one knows the secret, really almost mad longing in my heart for God. What can I say? Who would believe that such longing, much less understand it? If you saw me, perhaps you would miss it, but it was always there in me, just beneath the surface. To be so close, to feel such unity with God, and not able to see it clearly is unbearable. The soul knows this truth of how it would unfold, but I didn't at that moment. I did not. To know and to not know at the same time is the most incredible sweetness. You see, it takes God, it takes intoxication to become one with that divinity. Don't make it happen, by the way. Don't compare. It's important here. Don't compare. Please, we all have it. It's what we're made of. Love is not an emotion. It's our very existence. It takes a certain intoxication to draw you into that divinity. And this is what I felt, but I didn't understand. All that I knew is that night there was a connection that was made, and I would have to see where it would take me. I felt Sri Sri's presence on me, with me, around me, all that night. And it was like being wrapped in a blanket of grace. You guys may have heard these words before. In my mind, something said, patience, patience, you'll see, you'll see. And over the next few days, an amazing change takes place as a result of this merging of our hearts and mind. Everywhere I go, I'm feeling this awareness. Sri Sri's presence, awareness there. Somehow, because we united so completely, a link, a bond, and now we're connected in a new and inexplicable way. A completely new spiritual dimension has opened up for me. And I wonder, is this what being with the spiritual being is like? Will it last? Is it my imagination? You know, I doubt. And he talked about doubts actually that evening. He said, okay, have doubts. So what? Doubts come and go like waves in the ocean. If you're going to doubt doubt everything 100%. Can you doubt that the floor will hold you? Can you doubt that the air will go into your lungs? Can you doubt this way? You see, life is based upon trust. The electric company, the credit card company trusts you will pay the bills. Yes, I see this. So let's try the other side. I'll trust. Let's see what happens. And this begins by trusting my own story, which was hard to, in some places, for me to understand. The secret journey that I'd been through, the time has come, or at least I thought perhaps the time had come. And over the next few days at this program, every time I turn around, there's another person, a friend, somehow I'd never met before, waiting to hear it. I hadn't said anything to anybody. And any of you that happened to have been on that course that remember being there, I was a little of a crazy guy because I'd written it, but I hadn't said it. And Sri Sri even used a process on that advanced course, which we break up into small groups and shared the story of our life. Those of you that have done this, you know. And I'm sitting there and I said, I've got 350 pages in my room. I can say I can only laugh at the coincidence of it. In listening to the life stories of a few friends, I see that what I've written in its essence, is not so different. Everyone is living such a secret journey. The specific events of life might be different. We might be in the midst of tragedy or ecstasy, but the same truth is emerging in all of us. And the events in our life resemble flowers growing on the same vine. Each flower may appear different, but the same life and realization is blossoming there. In the days that follow, we meet with Sri Sri, we sing, we dance, we meditate, or we begin some unique processes develop. And the group grows closer and closer, like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, forming a beautiful picture. And each evening, there's a celebration, and he sings songs with us. He shares the knowledge playfully. And the evening ends with an ecstatic dance through the run, people hugging people along the way as he goes in and out. Every time I'm carried away in a wave of rapture, more powerful than I ever thought was possible before. So I reflected on his words at our meeting. And he said to me, "So is it becoming clear? What does that mean?" Yes, I understand. The vision of myself is becoming clear. In 1976, when I received this gift of grace, this pragya, Ritamara pragya, the establishment in the state is called clear. It's called clear Rita. This is what Maharishi called it. Is this what he's talking about? Is he somehow referring to this? And in this point in the book, you can see there's a beautiful picture of us having a wonderful hug. Hugging Shishi at that time. So I touched a new state of consciousness. So let's end today's episode. Come back again. We'll continue next time with part 3 of book 2 of the autobiography of some crazy guy called Yogadhi, on the rise of the first world teacher. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. Just love each other. Do some good. Tell your story. Share your story. I really love doing it this way because it's very quiet, actually. I feel a responsibility to put it out. This is a quiet story of an amazing adventure that I've passed through. And its only hope is to provide a bridge in everyone's understanding, that they understand that these things are really quite real. And the hard work that we all must do within us, we all have to make that work. We'll have to do that work. But we can take one step towards that greater life, and the grace that is in this world, in the form of all the great teachers, they'll take 100 steps towards you. It's much easier that way, and it's much, much easier in a supportive community. And if you don't have, friends around you that can support you in your personal growth, you need to find some new, different friends that are interested in some of these things, and it will be with you to support you on the way. Because there are many places you can get lost in this world. And even in the spiritual path, there are many places you can slip off to this side, and not continue to make the rapid progress that is very, very powerful. And the world is full of really old stories of some pretty people that were pretty deep into darkness that have passed into this advanced state of consciousness. The last book was about cosmic consciousness. This one is about the 2 states beyond that. Bye-bye. Namaste. Thanks for joining us in our YouTube channel, books, podcast episodes on living the enlightened life, and autobiography with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon.